Hello, everybody. This is Lenny Murphy with Green Book, continuing the series of interviews with leaders that are transforming the industry and or transforming their businesses. And today we have George Terhanian, Group Chief Strategy Officer of Toluna. George, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Lenny.
Anytime. Always a pleasure. It seems like I only run into you at Rethink. So it's nice to have a chance to chat outside of standing in the middle of the Marriott.
Well, I'd like to see more of you, but we're not meeting in person today. But I think Skype is fine from my standpoint.
Yeah, it works.
Better than nothing.
It is. So, and better than standing outside of a conference room at the Marriott and being bumped into people and coffee spilled and all that good stuff. So, all right. So we are going to talk a little bit about Toluna, and as we were chatting right before this, so that I reached out to you because when I think about companies that are transformative. And that are transforming today, I think Toluna fits both those categories. The original model of the social network in France, of the asking questions of consumers piece, I think was fairly revolutionary early on in the marketplace. And then, of course, now you've had a steady stream of releases of new products, some of those tied to survey and research companies, some that are designed more towards engaging directly with end clients. And, of course, last year at SMR, Frederic rolled out a video that I would love to get my hands on at some point that painted a picture of the Toluna of the future that I thought was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And a wonderful example of the relationship economy and how research plays a role in that. So that's why I wanted to talk. So why don't you tell me a little bit of your take on where Toluna has been, where it is, and where you see it going, and then we can just go from there.
Okay, fair enough. You mentioned we call it a social voting community. It's Toluna.com is the site, and it is the site where members can ask other members questions. And we also then permit our own clients to ask those members questions. We make them available for surveys either directly through our quick surveys product or less directly through our standard core business where we work primarily with market research agencies. But it is the core to what we do. It's a different way of recruiting, managing a community than the transactional model that you see in place in the industry for the most part, whereby people opt into taking part in surveys. There's a loyalty and kind of incentive program. The more surveys they take, the more points they earn, and then they cash out or they don't cash out. And the relationship is very much a transactional one. We want our relationship with our members to be more than transactional. We want to give them a benefit above and beyond any points they earn. And the fact that about a quarter of them sign up of their own accord, I think, is a good reflection of how well that philosophy works and also the strategy itself. So at Toluna, we do two things, and we have two purposes, really. The first is to bring people closer to people, and that's what we do through the Toluna.com community. A person signs up, he or she can then begin posting questions online or through our mobile app to other members, get the information back straight away. You referred to the futuristic video where Frederic was the star that we shared at SMR last year. And that's all about Toluna.com. It's about members who want feedback, want information, want answers from a peer group or an objective group that may not be a group of peers in real time. They post the question, they get the answer back, or they post an image, or they post a video, and they get the answer back right away. That's important to us. It helps, from our perspective, it helps bring people closer to people, and that's core of what we do. The second thing that we do is to bring brands, and we consider a brand a market research agency or really an end client. We want to bring those brands closer to those same people as well. And that is really it. And when we say we want to bring brands as close to people as possible or closer to people, it means that we want to connect brands that have questions to those people who are part of our social voting community. And we want them to do it themselves through our self-serve engine, or we want them to work through us, through our account representatives. And I think think from our perspective, having that kind of simple framework makes life much easier for us. So when people ask me what Toluna does, I say, well, we do two things. We bring people closer to people, and we bring brands closer to people. And that's pretty much it. And then you might say, well, why do people want to get people? Why do people want to get closer to people? Why do brands want to get closer to people? It's curiosity. You know, we're in business because people are curious. Brands are curious, and we provide a means for them to answer the questions they have in real time, over time, year after year, whatever it may be.
So, thinking about you were on a buying spree a few years back with major acquisitions of Greenfield and Chow, I think predominantly, which I would categorize as kind of traditional panel assets. First, have you brought those assets into Toluna.com, meaning that the consumers, have they engaged there? Or are there still effectively kind of two pieces of the business where there's, the Toluna.com, which I believe is mostly prevalent in Europe. I know it's my belief. I'm not sure. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. And then the existing kind of traditional panel business. How's that work?
Yeah. The first part of your question concerned the acquisitions that you mentioned and the integration of those acquisitions. So the Greenfield Online, Chow, Common Knowledge in
Common
the
knowledge.
US.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. And we've put together all those pieces. So all those companies had panels, and we've integrated all of those panels in our system, which we call our unified panel system. And everyone is under, within one domain and in one system. And so from anywhere in the world where we operate, our client services representatives can select respondents, for surveys. And it's a very efficient system. And over the past year, we've had demand from really market research agencies who've investigated the systems that are available, who perhaps run and manage their own panel system. And what they want is very much what we have. So last year, we actually worked with a major market research agency, and we created a white label version, of the Toluna Unified Panel System for them. We're able to do that because we have we believe in research and development. We like to own the R&D process. And most of the R&D work that we do, comes through our teams in North Andover, Massachusetts, and also in Haifa, in Israel. And it's essential for what we do. And your point about Toluna.com, that is our social voting community. And that operates in every market where we operate, so 39 countries now.
Okay.
And the community is actually quite active in the U.S., which is fantastic. It's also quite active in places that would surprise you, in Brazil and Italy and Spain, not only in France and the U.K. Having said that, we're seeing our steepest increase in activity on Toluna.com in APAC in particular, and that's where our business is growing at a very high rate right now. And so everything is integrated, everything is unified, and the roadmap we have for R&D it calls for further integration. Last week, as an example, we announced that we issued a press release that more or less described what we're doing with our Quick Surveys product. It's called Toluna Quick Surveys. Anyone can go into Quick Surveys, and they can use the system for free, or they can use the system and they can choose the people that they want to interview. They can conduct the survey, and they can see the results in real time. What we did last week was to integrate Toluna Analytics, which is a high-end reporting and visualization system that we use for market research companies in particular, that does crosstabs, that does weighting, that lets them modify questions, combine questions and response categories with the data that they have and export data. We integrated that with Quick Surveys. And so we're bringing these different pieces together, and that is part of the strategy that we have. We're trying to create efficiencies and also automation. We have lots of people who work for us in our operations function who do survey programming and data processing, but at the same time, we're trying to automate a lot of the work that our survey programmers and data processors do, because we see demand for self-serve tools increasing rather than decreasing over time. And we want to lead the way. We not only want to meet the demand that exists. But I think we want to help to make that market too, because we believe that the growth of the market research industry and the value of market research agencies in particular will hinge heavily on automating a lot of the operational tasks that are now manual. Because the value add that a market research agency brings to an end client, the insights that they share,
Yep.
And not necessarily the data that they collect or the programmers who script surveys or anything like that. So that's
Right.
part of our strategy as well.
Okay. So that's interesting, and I agree with you 100%. And certainly as an old research company CEO, if we'd had this conversation 5 years ago, it would have scared the crap out of me because I made a lot of my margin from marking up the programming and all that good stuff. Um, and shh, you didn't hear that from me, but that's that's part of the model. Um, so today, you're really participating in the transformation of the industry as a whole, particularly full service agencies, by creating these new technology tools, while at the same time, to some extent, you're a competitor to them as well. With the embracing of the DIY model, you're in the same boat that Research Now, that Google, that USAMP, I mean everybody else that plays in this category. We're all effectively staking out the same basic path, seeing the same thing, and I think that's validation of the marketplace. Um, but how do you straddle those lines? How do you communicate clearly to your research supplier clients that look, you know, look, we're all reading the same writing on the wall, right? This is the way things are going. We're not trying to
Mm.
disintermediate you. We're trying to support you. However, because we all do see what's happening, we are going to engage with clients if they ask us to, and continue down this path of building our technology-based company. Uh, how do you position yourself effectively to deal with that?
I always, I've worked for a market research agency, a full service agency for, 14 years, almost 15 years.
That was Harris, right?
And at Harris, yeah. And, I was responsible for operational functions, for survey functions, for, everything that, you can imagine different times and at the same time, actually, at Harris toward the end.
Right.
And, one of the questions that I ask all the time is, if I were still at Harris, what would I be trying to accomplish? What would I be trying to accomplish in order to improve the proposals that we write? And what would I do at Harris? Because that's a big part of what a market research agency does. A lot of time is spent writing proposals, thousands of hours a year for some of the bigger clients. And if you were to put a cost on that, it's, many millions of dollars when you look at the time spent and the resources that are allocated to proposal writing. It's tremendous. And some of these companies have very complex processes, lay out roles and responsibilities, and they're very clear. If you're a full-service market research agency, you know that if you can increase your win rate through proposals and you have the same number of proposals coming in, obviously you're going to increase your revenues. And so I asked myself, at Toluna, what would I do if I were still at Harris to increase the proposal win rate? What would I do to increase the speed by which we collected data? What would I do to increase the speed by which we reported data? The speed by which we made that data that's reported available in real time for our researchers and our analysts to understand what it is and make sense of it and communicate it to our clients. And what would I do to create capabilities that I thought build on our strengths that we can make available to clients, like building communities, akin to what Diane Hessen is doing at Communispace. And so really, those 4 or 5 things are what we're trying to accomplish at Toluna. And the ideal target in some ways for the services that we're developing are full service market research companies. If I were, say an independent consultant and I wanted to create, not the semblance, but if I wanted to project to a brand, a major brand, that I have all the capabilities that they require, right, through partnership with Toluna, and I then propose work, and I have the people who can do the work, and that end client then looks at the price that I'm offering versus full service market research agency, because this individual consultant is working with Toluna with all of our capabilities, his cost base is going to be so much lower that some end clients are going to choose. And so what I think we're doing at Toluna is all the things that full service market research agencies should be doing, and that some of them are doing. And by partnering with us, I think they'll have a leg up on the competition by outsourcing to us. And I mentioned the agency that outsourced to us and that are using our unified panel system internally. I think that's an incredibly smart strategy. That R&D is not their core capability. Their core capability is generating insights. They used us for their non-core capability because they know that it's core. So I don't really see us competing against a market research agency unless that agency stands still. Unless that agency almost pretends that all of the events and all of the transformational technologies that are being developed will have no impact on their business at all, right? Those companies, I think, will be in trouble. The companies that embrace technology, whether they do it themselves or whether they outsource it, I don't think they will be in trouble. And if you're one of these companies that does not embrace technology and you ultimately decide to switch suppliers to someone who does, or even if you decide that much of the work that you do is routine and can be automated, and you decide to work with Toluna, I think that's a smart decision. And I think as a market research agency, if you happen to be our Toluna client, we'll work with you to help you develop those technologies, because we would rather sell to you or with you to the end client than, because we don't have people who are loyalty consultants or who have an expertise in brand management or communication strategies or public opinion research, or we don't have a team of marketing scientists or qualitative experts the way that a lot of the full service market research agencies do. So we have to leverage what our strengths are, and we have to work ideally with our partners who typically are market research agencies, less frequently end clients, but perhaps increasingly end clients if the market research agencies who are core clients don't transform, don't change with the times, and some of them don't. My experience 15 years ago, when we were introducing online research, was that some companies, big brands in particular, big market research agencies, stood still. They weren't part of the initial changes that were occurring, that were quite dramatic, that were causing their clients to shift from telephone research in particular and face-to-face research in the UK and other places to online. And ultimately, they found themselves behind the curve. They did not jump on the train early on. And some of the companies that you see out there, their origin can be traced directly to online research. Many of the companies actually, and you mentioned them, Toluna, Greenfield Online, Chow, even Harris Interactive, transformed through online research and grew quite dramatically. I think we'll see the same thing now. The smart market research agencies have a strategy. I don't know what the smartest strategy is, depends on the company, but those that work with us and help us develop some of the capabilities that they're not really optimized to develop themselves, I think are the ones that are going to win.
Okay. I think that's a fairly accurate read. Where that leads us, though, is thinking about, as we shift away from primary data collection, contrary to many people may think, I actually believe that there will always be a need to ask questions. Surveys will always be a significant part of the research toolkit, although not necessarily the core driver of revenue as it is today. Where what we define as quantitative research is 70% of global spend. That definition, I think, will shift pretty significantly. And there will be other types of data collection that take bigger chunks of that. So thinking if that supposition is true, then say social media analytics, that's an easy one. Excuse me, facial scanning, emotional measurement, yada, 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 these other techniques. How would a company like Toluna, as much as you can share about your strategy, how are you going to incorporate these other tools into the toolkit in order for you to fulfill your mission of helping people connect with people and brands to connect with people?
Yeah, we don't see survey research dying. I spoke at the 2 years ago the plenary session of the American Association of Public Opinion Research Conference for Public Opinion Research Conference, and one of the questions that I think a lot of the public opinion researchers there were focusing on was what do we do? We're seeing the cost of probability surveys, random digit dial surveys increasing. We've already shifted to multi-mode surveys using where we're calling mobile phones directly in addition to dialing landlines at random. We've seen the response rate to survey research wane through the years, the way that a lot of the online research people predicted back in the mid and late 90s. Is this the end, right, of survey research? And I don't think anyone there thinks it's the end of survey research. I think APOR and other survey research organizations believe that public opinion measurement should be defined broadly. You don't measure public opinion simply through telephone research or face-to-face research. You can do it through through times qualitative research. You can do it through social media analysis. You can do it by linking survey data to transactional data. The more information that you have that's relevant, the better able you are to understand why people do what they do. And it doesn't matter if you're a public opinion researcher or if you're a brand. You want to know why people do what they do. You, to some extent, want to predict what they'll do in the future. You want to understand what's important to them, and you want to understand what you can do to increase, if you're a brand, the value that you bring to them through the products or the services that you offer them. And survey research is part of it, but it's only one part of it. And so from Toluna's perspective, we believe in survey research, right? People ask other people questions, brands ask those people questions as well. We also believe that every question that we ask to our community members when we're developing profiles for them, that we should be able to store that information and reuse it so we don't have to repeat those questions. The problem is that if you repeat the same question over and over again to the same person, that person's going to think that you're kind of dumb because you don't remember the answer that they gave in the past.
Right. Didn't I just say that? Right. Yeah.
It's a problem. And if you look at the public opinion research industry and random digit dialing, they always begin with a kind of a blank canvas of the individual that they contact. And so they know who people are. They have the means of collecting information about households and those people, yet every time they interview them, they start from scratch and they repeat the questions over and over again. To a large extent, the online panel business has reflected in public opinion research, where almost every survey that you repeats core demographic questions and profile questions and others. Very few companies today have, say a battery of 1,500 questions that have been answered already by the respondent, or with responses that have been imputed through some modeling, because you don't necessarily have to ask every person answer every question. And that's just the survey research part of it. And you mentioned social media analysis. For us, it's very important to understand what information people are posting online, because we can then capture that information and potentially choose people based on that information for surveys that our clients are running, or we can potentially augment the survey information we collect with that information. So that is part of our strategy. Another part of our strategy is to use the resources that we have. The resources that we have are people and also our R&D team to collect more information that's relevant and important from people that we can reuse and repurpose for our clients. And it might be online footprints of our respondents, or it might be the real footprints that we measure through the location capabilities within their phones. We want to be able to access all that information. We want to use that when we or clients are choosing people for surveys, and we want to repurpose that survey on the back end and maybe add that to survey data, or develop segmentations or even products that use all of that information and combine that information. And the key to all of this is not only to collect it and to reuse it, but it's to do it in an efficient way so that we don't burden our community members who really don't want to have to answer the same question over and over again, sometimes within the same survey session, which is kind of crazy. So we're trying to stay away from that.
So then ultimately you're going for the single source big data play as well then.
Yeah, it's learning as much as we can about the people in our community through whatever means we have available. And one means is survey research, another is mobile research, another, or the mobile device, another is social media analysis, and that information is important. For us not to attempt to collect as much as we can and to use that or reuse that efficiently, it defeats our primary purpose, which is bringing people closer to people. You bring people closer to people, you don't want stuff to get in the way. And stuff that gets in the way are really long, bad surveys with high dropout rates that are a function of repeating the same question over and over again that does not need to be repeated. And so we're trying to stay away from that. And I'm a huge believer in, less is more. If you're a good writer, the fewer words you use, really the better. If
Right.
you're developing PowerPoint presentations, the simpler the screen, the better. In science, one of the tenets of science is simplicity. Same sort of thing. And so if we can be efficient, good for us, good for our clients, and especially good for the community members, to whom we have access.
Okay. But George, you've been really generous with your time. We're coming up on about 30 minutes for the interview, so I want to be conscious of our time. I think you and I could probably go on for an hour or two if we didn't watch ourselves. So having this conversation, but play amateur prognosticator for a minute. Think about the industry as it stands today and the shape of the industry by 2020. What is your sense of what the role of Toluna in whatever that ecosystem may look like, and secondly, just kind of the broad strokes. What do you think this thing we call market research, what that's going to look like in 6 years from now?
I think that we'll see increasing automation. So anything that people do today that requires lots of time, lots of minutes, lots of hours, that those functions are going to be replaced by automation. I think we'll see it on the sampling end. Increasingly we'll see platforms that are being built that let clients choose the people themselves without interacting, with the person, where they can pay online, where they can specify quotas online, where sampling templates are available that they simply select and choose. And within those templates and those systems, I think we'll have the brain power of the top sampling scientists, in the world, in the industry. And they'll replace a lot of the activity that goes on today with sampling departments within MR agencies and also within companies like Toluna. I think we'll also see automation on the survey programming side, where increasingly clients will use templates or pre-scripted questionnaires that won't require them to go to a physical survey programmer. We'll see automation on the reporting side. And I believe, and this might be the biggest change, we'll see automation on the analysis side. So rather than having a team of marketing scientists who are doing conjoint analysis for you, or who are doing brand positioning work or concept testing or copy testing, I think we'll see modules develop that work within these self-serve systems that automate much of the work that these people are doing, but that will also benefit from the work that they're doing as well. We'll also see reporting engines that are automated and that link with, say, PowerPoint presentations, and that potentially they'll also produce reports and recommendations and implications. And I think that's where we'll be in 2020. That's survey information, but it's also non-survey information that I think will be used to select people for surveys and also to augment survey information with other information. And it's a scary future if you are a full-service market research agency that has this big factory in place. It's a scary model if you're a brand, you're an end client, where historically you haven't really lifted a finger because you outsource everything to market research agencies or you have your own team in-house. I don't think that we will necessarily see fewer people in the industry, but I think we'll see increased automation. And those people whose skills are really no longer required at a rudimentary level, I think they need to be trained to do other kinds of work within the companies within which they work, or they need to find jobs outside the sector, because this is very much going to happen. There will always be clients that want to do all this work themselves. They don't want automation, or if they want automation, they want assistance with the automation. But automation will be core, and I think Toluna and others, the technology is available to automate. The brain power is available to automate. The demand is out there to automate, at least because through automation you reduce your costs, you increase the time by which you produce insights, and you also create efficiencies for the respondents whom you're looking to interview in the first place. And I think that's where we'll be in 2020. Automation is really the key. Lots of talk about DIY, but it's more, automation is really critical. You don't necessarily have to do something yourself if processes are automated. You can work with others who can take you through the process. You won't need to work with as many people as you have in the past.
Right.
So that's my vision. It says say that nobody's unpredictable, but you're asking about prognostication for the industry, and I think that's the direction in which the industry is heading.
I tend to agree. I think there's some, some nuances that we could get into, and we can have that debate in March at ARF when we run into each other again. We're going to call Terhanian's Asimov version of the future. I think that's it's very kind of an iRobot type of thinking, and I'm all for that too. So, George, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. It's always great to chat with you. I hope that we get a chance to do it again soon, outside of again the of conferences. Are you going to be at the market research event? Are you going to be at TMRE?
I won't be at the market research event, but I will be at the annual CSO conference in October. Okay. I'll be at the SMR conference as well.
Okay. I'm not going either of those, but I'll be at TMRE. So I think the walls would fall down if I entered into a CSO conference. But
Lenny, you're welcome wherever you go. It's CSO as an industry realized that we're going to experience transformation, and they want to support their members. So I think you would be more than welcome at a CSO conference, any other conference. And I want to thank you for your time too. I enjoyed this.
Well, thanks, George. I appreciate that. So look forward to chatting again soon, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, you too.